to Miss Jody's Music Time. I'm so excited to bring you part 5 of the Science of the Symphony. Today we will visit the last house in our instrument neighborhood, and it is the loudest house probably the most raucous, and it is the house of the percussion instruments. These instruments are usually found in the back of our orchestra. They are so many different sizes and so many different shapes, I don't even know where to begin. I know where to begin. Let's start with the drums. Okay, it's time to visit the Percussion House. When we visited the woodwind house, we learned that the way you land in the woodwind house is by creating a vibration or sound with candle blowing air. We learned that if you are in the brass house, you have to create a vibration by buzzing your lips. We learned that the strings get plucked, and now we're in the percussion house. How do we create sound if we are in the percussion house? The way sound is created is by a vibration when we strike it or scrape it to create that kind of vibration sound through any of our percussion instruments. I like to think of our percussion house as being divided into 4 different groups of instruments within that house. We're going to start with the drums. Anything that is called a drum usually has a head, and it has some kind of shell to it, like a body to it. Now, we can have drums that have just one head to them, such as this drum. If you look very carefully, it's open at the bottom, but it's got a head on the top. We can also have drums that have 2 heads. You and I just have 1 head, but a drum could actually have 2 heads like this one. It has a head on this side, and it has a head on this side. The first drum I want to talk about is this drum. It's one of our most common drums, and it's called the snare drum. The snare drum has 2 different sounds that it can make. It can make this sound. That's a sound we know very well. Or I can move my magic lever here on the side, and I can make it sound a different way. That has a much different sound to it. But how does that work? Well, let me come a little bit closer and I'll show you. Like I said before, the snare drum has a head on the front, but when I turn it over, you'll see that there's also a head on the back. It might be hard to see in the video because it's clear. Now the head on the front is very, very strong, and you can hit it very hard and you won't break it. But the one on the back, this one has quite a thin head to it. And I don't want to drum on that because I could easily poke a hole in it. If you look on the back, you'll see these metal threads. And these metal threads are what gives the snare drum its name. These metal threads are called snares. So when I have this drum and the snares are loose, you can see they're wiggly right now. When they're loose, the drum makes this kind of sound. But when I move my magic lever and I tighten up those snares on the back, I'm going to turn it over again and show you that now the snares are very tight against the back. This catches the vibration then from hitting the top of the head. The vibration goes in between both heads inside that shell, and it rattles these snares. Listen to what these snares sound like. And if I tap on that, you're going to hear that kind of a sound. You can hear that rattle from those snare drums. Let's go look at some other drums. Now, the other very common drum that has 2 sides to it is the big bass drum. Like you see in parades, boom, 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 boom. We have another one that we use in our concerts for our orchestra that's a huge bass drum. It stands about this tall off the ground. So it's a very, very big drum, but it's got 2 heads to it. Now going back to the drums that only have 1 head, they come in all different sizes. You can see right here that I've got some little tom drums, and the size determines what it's going to sound like. Remember that the smaller something is, the higher the sound is going to be. The bigger something is, the lower the sound is going to be. Let's hear from our smallest drum. It looks like Mickey Mouse, doesn't it? Here's the smallest one. Here's the medium-sized one. Now we'll tap on Mickey's head and see what it sounds like. Now, could you hear that? Could you hear the snare drum? Listen again. I was hitting the tom drum, but the snare drum is what was rattling. And why was it rattling? Do you remember? What causes that rattle is those invisible sound waves. The sound waves traveled from my one drum and rattled the second drum. That's pretty neat. Another kind of drum comes from Africa, and this drum is very neat. It's called a djembe. See what a djembe looks like? It's got a bigger top to it and goes to a smaller bottom. It has a head on top, and it's got a hollow bottom inside. Now this drum can't sit flat on the floor because it would have a very dead sound. It sure wouldn't ring. So what I have to do is I have to tip it a little bit so that it can have some room to breathe. Now, it can make 3 different sounds. If I hit it with my flat hand in the middle, it makes a big bass sound. If I move my hand a little bit further to the edge, it has a little bit of a middle sound to it. It's higher than the bass sound. And then if I have my fingers on the tips, it can make that very high sound. So we can actually hit the djembe 3 different ways to make 3 different sounds. Do you know how to spell djembe? What do you think it starts with? A J? No, that's a good guess. A G? Nope, that's a good guess too. But it starts with a D. It is spelled D-J-E-M-B-E, a djembe. Now the second group of instruments in the percussion household are the cymbals. Now this cymbal right here, believe it or not, it's kind of big, but it's actually a medium-sized cymbal. So when we go to play different kinds of cymbals, they'd be all different sizes. We could have ones that are this size, and we can crash them together, or we could have one a little bit bigger. We can have cymbals as small as this. These are finger cymbals. Now, our percussionists act like scientists on a regular basis. They usually bring a whole bag of mallets and sticks because they each will sound a different way on our instrument. If we take our cymbal, and if I use something hard to hit it, like a drumstick, we can make that kind of sound. If I take something softer, like this mallet, we can make a much softer sound to it. If I take something metal and I run it across the cymbal, I might be able to even make a sound that sounds like a magic wand. So you can see that I haven't changed my cymbal in any way, but I have changed the sound of it just by what I'm using to strike it or scrape it to make different sounds. Now, I want to show you one more thing about the cymbal, and I have to come up close. So hold on right there. Okay, if I hit the cymbal really hard, I want to see if you can see this edge get blurry. That means that's the vibration happening. You can see it on a cymbal, just like you could when we plucked the string on a string instrument. So I'm going to hit this real hard. You might want to plug your ears. Can you see it's getting a little bit blurry? Okay, now watch what happens. I'm going to flatten this out. I stop the blur, and that stops the sound because the vibration has stopped working. Okay, back to our table. The third group of instruments in our percussion household are the keyboard instruments. These instruments are built to be like a piano. This bottom row is the white keys and this top row is the black keys. Now, I could take different kinds of mallets also to play these instruments. And what we do is we just tap them. And we have a nice ring to each of these different bars. If you notice, the bars are different sizes. What did we talk about? The bigger something is, the lower the sound is going to be. So the bars on this side of the instrument are much bigger, and they make a much lower sound. If we go to the ones that are over here that are much smaller, they're a much higher sound. And that's how our keyboard instruments work. We have lots of different keyboard instruments made of lots of different kinds of materials, like wood or metal. And we have the bells here, we have a xylophone, we have a marimba, we have chimes. All kinds of different instruments go with the keyboard instruments. So in the world of percussion instruments, we see that they have a couple different groups in their family. We have the drums, which if you're a drum, remember you have a head, possibly two heads. And then there are the cymbals, which are those big metal discs that vibrate and make all kinds of great metallic sounds. And then we had the keyboard instruments in the percussion world, and they are the instruments like the xylophone and the bells and the chimes and the marimba. I could go on and on. And those instruments act like a piano. And I didn't get to show you this because all of my bells are colored the same way. But you'll always see on our keyboard instruments, you'll always see two rows of bars. And those are the keys just like a piano. The row that's closest to you that has all the bars there, that's just like the white keys on a piano. The row behind it that has gaps in where the bars are, those are just like the black keys on a piano. Did you know that a piano is part of the percussion world? I'm not lying to you. It's for real. Have you ever looked inside a real piano? It has strings inside of it. Well, Miss Jody, then how can you say it's part of the percussion world if it has strings in it, just like the harp or the violin? Well, remember that the way we're inside of our houses is determined by how we create sound. In the world of the string instruments, the string is plucked or plucked by a bow drawn across it. But in a piano, the way we make sound on those strings is by striking the string. And by striking the string, we land in the percussion world. Because the way we make sound in Percussion House is we strike or scrape to make the sound on our instrument. So a piano, next time you see one, when you push down those white and black keys, they are striking a string that's hidden inside the piano. And that's why we call the piano part of the percussion world. And that's why those keyboard instruments are so greatly related to be just like a piano. Now, here we also have some instruments that are part of the auxiliary group of instruments. Auxiliary, that's the extra stuff. The percussionists are often asked to make lots of different sound and sound effects to make our music so exciting. If we were playing, let's say, the Polar Express music, we might need something like this. Have you ever seen one of these? Let's listen to it. That's a train whistle. That's pretty cool. We also have jingle bells that we might use during the Polar Express. We may have seen maybe a movie or a show that has a wooden soldier in it. And have you ever seen the wooden soldiers and they have the big key on the back of them? We might need a sound from the ratchet that sounds like this. That's really loud, by the way. We also have some things that are shakers. I made a whole video on how to make shakers, and one of the kinds of shakers that I like the most are the maracas. The shakers can be all different sizes and have all different things inside of them to make all different kinds of sounds, just depending on what the percussionist needs. The percussionist acts like a scientist all the time. They try out different sticks and mallets to see that they can find the exact sound that they're looking for. Another instrument that's common in the auxiliary parts of the percussion is the tambourine. Remember when we made the tambourine? It has a lot of cool sounds. We can use our fingertips. We can use our whole hands. We can also just shake it. And we have these jingles. What were they called in my other video? They're called zills. Yes! The zills jingle against each other. They hit each other. They're striking each other to make that vibration happen. We also remember the rain sticks, which have particles inside striking the inside of that tube. That's a very relaxing sound, isn't it? We also have instruments like the woodblock. And another common one, I think you might know what the name of this is by the shape of it. What's this one called? The triangle. There's also something you could do with a triangle that I only found out recently, and that's I could stop the vibration with my fingers, or I could let the vibration happen. So as I clamp it, the vibration is stopped. And as I let it ring, the vibration travels all around the triangle. In the world of percussion, we have so many different instruments, and there's a lot that I don't have at my house to show you, but I want to tell you about a couple more just so that you know they're part of that percussion world. One that I mentioned that I don't have here is the bass drum. It is huge. We also have 4 other drums that are very, very important in our orchestra, and they are called the timpani. The timpani drums are about this big each, and they stand about this tall from the floor, and they're so big that I couldn't even fit one of them in my car, and we use 4 of them. And if you don't know what the timpani sounds like, they're the big drums that can have actual tuned notes. They can sound like different notes, and they are the ones that go like this. Boom, 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 boom. And when you hear that sound of a drum, you'll know that that is the timpani sound. Now, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to make something like drums and stuff in the percussion world at home. So let's explore what we can do in our house to make some drums. Now, we already made shakers in another video. We already made rain sticks and the tambourines, but we have not made any drums. So let's look at what I have here. I have my big container. Can you hear that? It's a very, very low sound. Why is it low? Because it's so big. Now, I have another can, and that is a little bit smaller than the first can. But wait, I forgot. I packed some more inside of here. That's right. I packed this size can. Wait. I think I have another one in here too. I do. I have another one. Look at the size of that can. So I liked all these particular containers because they have plastic lids that fit right on top of them. And if I have these plastic lids, you can see that that makes a perfect drum head. Now I could just hit it with my fingers. I could even have this one go too. And they each give a different sound. So if I wanted to have a stick to play with, I could use a wooden spoon, or I could use a fork or a spoon. Probably a spoon. We don't want to poke them with a fork. So if I want to make my own drum set, I can do it by just holding onto the containers with different sizes of shapes. Different size containers make different noises. And it's kind of fun to find all these different containers. And you know what? If I wanted to have some cymbal time, some of these have a metal bottom to them, which would make a good sound of a cymbal. So I could almost get a whole drum set going if I wanted to. These are some easy things that you can do to make yourself some drums at home. Now, you can also use things like pots and pans, but make sure you don't drive your parents crazy. Don't drive them crazy. Now, I'm gonna leave you for today, but I hope you had a great time learning about the science of the symphony. I had a great time sharing with you. I hope you tune in again, and we'll have some more fun with Miss Jody's Music Time. Bye for now. And once again, it's time for Miss Jody's Mad Jam Song Selection. Yeah! Okay, the first song I have today is a funny song. And it's funny because I grew up with this song, but guess who told me to put it on my list? My 12-year-old son. That's right. He found it and he loved it just as much because they redid it with a crazy frog. Yes, Crazy Frog. So look up Axel F. Crazy Frog, and that's by Harold Feltmeyer. The second song I want you to listen to is called Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins. Love that song. And the third song I want you to listen to is Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. That has some amazing piano in it. You will love it. Have a great time, do some dancing, put on some costumes, maybe make a microphone, and get your jam on. See you next time.